how did I go 6 years without having sex, without being in a relationship, and without masturbating?
And just for the record as well, when I first started doing these videos, again, this is like my second or third video. I went out and was on the beach and I was trying to record this video. I did my wireless mic did have sound or noise reduction. However, there is some wind in the background because I was not aware at the time that I needed some type of wind guard as well. So you might hear a little bit of disruption, and that bothered me for some time. How do I resolve this wind? Because I wanted to record the videos at the beach, but again, that was an issue for me. In some of my early on beginning videos, you might hear some wind interruption because not knowing that I needed some type of wind guard to stop the sound of the wind.
As well. So before I get started, I would like to give you guys a very real life example of a person that I uh, came to find out that went 9 years being celibate, and that is the only person in the world that I have actually heard of a civilian going that long being celibate. And that individual is Lenny Kravitz. Lenny Kravitz. For those of you guys, I think there was a show on the Karen. Oh man, I can't remember the name of the show. The Karen something show. Yes, it was the Karen something show, and there was a debate going on how Lenny Kravitz went 9 years being celibate and without being in a relationship, and that was a big issue because I think at the time, uh, Ice-T, if I remember clearly, it was Ice-T who made a comment that it was kind of whack for an individual to go that long without uh, being celibate. And by no means am I dissing Ice-T because Ice-T is a legend in my book, and also OG from the Pimp School. I think Ice-T was probably in the game, probably if I remember clearly around '83, somewhere in that era, and I see it's probably about 67 now, 68. I'm not quite sure.
And again, as unfortunately this wind, but it's not, it will show up sporadically. But what I did watch this video some time back. It was a show. I can't remember. I think it was on YouTube. I can't remember. But either way, I saw the show, and the title again, the show was Karen. I can't the Karen Show or something of that sort. And the topic, the subject matter was Lenny Kravitz. Lenny Kravitz. So Lenny Kravitz went 9 years without sex, 9 years straight celibate, and so these guys were commenting on. It's actually Ice-T made a comment, and again, no disrespect to Ice-T, because Ice-T in my book is a legend, like I said, OG, an official P in the game. You understand me? So mad respect goes out to Mr. T. So by no means I don't want anybody to misunderstand this video like I'm coming off in some type of negative manner towards Mr. T. I'm just saying that he was the one who made the statement about how could Mr. Lenny Kravitz go 9 years without sex. So he was kind of just he was actually dissing Lenny Kravitz as far as I'm concerned, and so that is why I made the video, and I used this as an example to say, hey, there's other people out there. I went 6 years. There's people who actually went longer than me, and so that's why I'm using Mr. Kravitz for as an example. But again, Mr. Ice-T, again, no disrespect, he was the one who pretty much looked at Mr. Kravitz as being somewhat whack.
But again, mad respect, extreme, successful uh, businessman, film, movie maker, movie actor, and all of that stuff. But again, Ice-T was also, again, an official OG in the Pimp School way back in the day in '83. I think it was before he went into music. However, with that being said, so Ice-T made a comment in reference to uh, uh, Lenny Kravitz going 9 years without having sex again on the Karen show, and I think the topic was let's talk about sex. You guys can look it up somewhere. I think it's the Karen show. Let's talk about sex, and the topic was the title was Ice T disapproves of Lenny Kravitz going 9 years celibate. I think that was the subject topic motto. But anyhow, the moral of the story is other than monks and other than uh, some priests, because we all know, there's not very there's bishops that has wives and pastors that has wives, and it's very difficult to go and be celibate for some time and abstain from sex, and also, and it's a big difference, just so we know. And the reason I'm using Lenny Kravitz is because it's a different being celibate, and you cannot do any better. That is what we're talking about here. And that is why I'm using Lenny Kravitz as example, because I went 6 years strong uh, without having sex, nor pursuing a relationship, nor masturbating as well, and also having options. So that's what makes celibacy really effective, when you actually have options. Because most men, or they may say, "Oh, I am celibate, and I am celibate for X amount of time," or whatever the case may be. But technically, they have no options, or very options at best. And also, uh, sometimes men and women may say they are being celibate when they just got out of a relationship, and they uh, is not involved with anybody sexually at the time, and they may count that as being celibate also.
Let me interject here very briefly. And so, according to the standards of what they consider to be celibate, some individuals are not actually celibate by choice. Some men, specifically men, women don't really have the problem to find sex like men. Men could get, oh sorry, women could find some dick anywhere. Women could get sex anywhere. Woman could walk outside dressed in a garbage bag, and some motherfucker will offer that bitch some sex. So that is not the case for men. Men actually have to be qualified. They have to look a certain way. They have to have a certain standards, a certain amount of money, and all type of shit. Men have to actually possess to get sex. So when it comes down to being celibate, what most individuals fail to realize is that being celibate for a man, let's use a man for example, when a man says he's celibate, that man must have options. That man must have opportunities to have sex from other women. Now, if that man does not have any options to get sex from other women, then that is not qualified as celibacy. Celibacy is someone who has options. Now, if you are a guy and you cannot get any bitches or any hoes, you cannot get any casual sex at will. You know what I'm saying? And you're struggling and you want to have sex, but nobody just wants to lay down with you. Then that is not considered celibate. That is you just not having the ability to get some snatch. And so, also, what I'm talking about again, what I'm about to say, or what I'm starting to say, is another factor is some individuals, when they are in relationships and they are having sex, and then when they come out of a relationship and they might be in some type of downtime to where they are just about to transition into their next relationship. In fact, I created a video about this very same subject matter sometime much later down the line. I think it's called serial monogamous relationship, something of the sort. But anyhow, a video way down the line, I created that video, and I spoke about individuals going from one relationship to the next. And so sometimes individuals might be in a relationship as well. They may be in a relationship and then they may have a break and they may have a little downtime when they are not involved with anybody, and then they try to say they are celibate as well. No, motherfuckers, you are not a celibate. You are just in some type of transition. You are transitioning from one relationship to the next. That is the only reason that is not celibate. You cannot, that does not count. Being celibate is intentionally not having sex over a period of time, and also having options, not transitioning from one relationship to the next, and then when you do get into a relationship, then you're saying, oh, my celibate streak is over. No, motherfuckers, no. You guys are trying to take credit for more than you deserve. This celibacy, what I'm talking about, is having options, and that is what I did. I had options. I still have options today. That's why they call me Triple P. You understand me? Pimp, prophet, and fucking priest. But anyhow, with that being said, so I had options, but at the same time, I decided to take a break. And as we'll see as we go on in the video, I will discuss that a lot more, why and what happened, and so forth and so on. So let's get that out of the way. Celibacy is not just a casual break that you took because you cannot get some sex, or you just transitioning from one relationship to the next.
And yes, that is a streak of celibacy. However, that is the reason for that break is usually because they are simply transitioning from one relationship to another. So if if you want to consider celibacy as something that is a fact, I would say that for it to really be celibate, you have to have options as well, which is why again I am using Lenny Kravitz as a person as the best example that I can think of, because Lenny Kravitz is the person that actually I would assume still has options today. And also Lenny Kravitz was not just anybody off the streets for many years, and almost I assume today Lenny Kravitz was considered a sexual icon. So there you have it. Someone who has the ability to have sex but does not choose to, then I would consider that to be actual celibacy. And for those who, the guys, and I would like to also make a comment about the guys who actually was on the show, the Karen. I can't remember the name for one reason or another. I can't remember the name of the show, but I know it was called Karen something, the Karen show. And the guys who was on that show, uh, they cannot relate because those guys were just basically regular guys, squares, tricks, and simps at best. So those guys don't have any idea at all how what it would be to become a sex icon, if I may say. So those
And just to add to that, that is what I'm saying. So the guys who made the comment, who kind of, looked at Lenny Kravitz sideways, those guys were not in a position, never in their lives, that they were in a position to have bitches throwing themselves at them. They have never been in a position. Lenny Kravitz is and I would even say still today, is considered a sex icon. Regular guys cannot even imagine what it's like to be someone like Lenny Kravitz. How many bitches and hoes was just breaking down this guy door to have sex. And I'm sure bitches are still lining up now today. Lenny Kravitz is still in tip top shape, and if you see that guy today, he doesn't look nowhere like his age. He still is in tip top shape. His diet is right. You know what I'm saying? He's still doing whatever he does. You know what I'm saying? So if you're a regular guy, you cannot understand what it is like. And even for me, I mean, I never had Lenny Kravitz status and so forth and all that shit. But hey, goddamn, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? Let's move on, because I don't want to get carried away. The video is just starting. You know what I'm saying?
those guys who was on the show, they said that, and again, you guys can go ahead and watch the show if you don't understand what I'm talking about. The guys who were hosting the show, they said that they think it was a publicity on Lenny Kravitz's behalf, because they felt like he was just trying to promote some type of album or something of that sort. But again, those guys are not in a position because they to speak uh, on Lenny Kravitz doing such an act, because they don't understand what it's like to have been in such a position. And basically, for all, most likely, all of Lenny Kravitz's life, he has had options, female options, most likely from birth. And for a regular civilian, that is not something that they would be able to understand. And most men that are considered, who are considered attractive, most men who are considered attractive, would know exactly what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about being attractive whereas your mom said you were attractive, because everybody moms at some point say, oh, you are so handsome, and they know you might not be the best looking child on the block, but they most likely will tell you something of that sort anyhow, just so you could feel good about yourself, because that is a mom duty, to lie to you and fill your head up with garbage, with garbage no matter what. So mother love.
That's some funny shit. So, so like I was saying, so guys who are really considered to be attractive, handsome guys or really attractive physically guys, these guys know what I'm talking about. Women, if you're considered a handsome guy or attractive guy, you have been told that you are handsome or cute or something all of your life. That is how you know that you are handsome or attractive. You've been hearing that from a child. That applies to women as well. If you were an attractive female girl or whatever, you've been hearing that all of your life. And so, but however, our mothers tend to, tell us, hey, you're so handsome and you're the nicest looking kid on the block and all that bullshit. Our mom tells us that's all this bullshit because, like I said, that is the job of a mother. But again, if you are a guy and no one actually never told you that you are handsome at least a few times in your life, then you might be considered to be average looking at best. And so, if you are average looking again, you would not understand what a guy who looks like Tyson Beckford in his prime, again, some other supermodels, those guys had bitches, like I said, Lenny Kravitz is a guy who had women pretty much, liking him from a child. This, the attractiveness is something that you are born with. Either you have it or you don't. However, as time go on, you could work on your body and you could become more physically fit and more attractive. And some people actually, maybe sometimes they start out not being the most attractive looking when they were younger, and then sometimes as time go on, then they tend to maybe blossom. They may be late bloomers. But in most cases, if you're a guy and no one ever told you that you were handsome at least a few times from random people other than your mom, then you would not understand what Lenny Kravitz was going through and how someone like him was able to go that long. Because I'm sure he've had women telling him that all of his life, and not just his mother. And again, having the stardom, the fame, and the fortune and all that. Hey, the average guy can't even imagine, because the average guy can't even have any sexual discipline to turn down any pussy at any time of the day. So this sounds like gibberish. This sounds like something out of a fairy tale, a movie to the average guy. And that's why I said the guys in the show who made the comments about Lenny Kravitz, they are average looking guys at best. So they were not in a position to even speak. And what they did say was, they said that they think that at the time Lenny Kravitz was promoting some type of album or something of that sort. So they assumed that Lenny Kravitz was just talking all of this bullshit for clout, trying to promote his album and maybe making such a bold statement like going 9 years without sex. I don't think Lenny Kravitz was talking shit. I think Lenny Kravitz was cold as ice. That motherfucker was really literally celibate, because you cannot imagine the amount of bitches and hoes that was breaking down Lenny Kravitz's door. So let me move it along.
It's kind of, you could look like, a rockfish, and your mother would still tell you you're the most handsomest guy on the planet. But again, that does not count. I think guys who would consider themselves to be handsome, they would be have been told that pretty much all of their lives. And we can attest, and we all could remember seeing some kids at birth. You could tell, you could look at a baby, and you could say, "Wow, this kid, this either boy or girl, is going to be a very handsome young man or beautiful lady when they get older because they were born with that trait. They were born being very attractive from out of the womb. And some people, again, those individuals who have had that experience, they would know exactly what I'm talking about. If you are a man, and I'm just going to use me for example. I'm not saying that by no means that I'm saying that I am the most handsome guy in the world. No, I'm not saying that. However, I will say that I was never rejected from a female on the basis of my looks alone. Yes, I have not. I have never, and we also know that looks is subjective because what one individual might consider to be uh, attractive, one individual may not consider to be attractive. However, there are some traits that are universally attractive, whether you are black, white, brown, whatever the case may be. Beauty usually stands out. True beauty usually stands out no matter what. And like I said before, I can say for myself, I might not be the most handsome guy in the world. However, I too have never been rejected for not meeting the looks requirements.
So, and that's the truth. A bitch never said, and again, I'm not saying that I'm the most handsome motherfucker on the block, but most bitches I would get rejected for something else. You know what I'm saying? Not being qualified in other areas, but not. I've never been rejected. Bitches never said, hey, you're ugly motherfucker or some shit. You look like Shaka Zulu or some bullshit. No, but I do get rejected in other areas. Nobody has the total package. No matter who you are, everybody has some type of flaw. And even if you are, the most handsome guy in the world, I will say this, even if you are the most handsome guy in the world, some bitches don't even like handsome men. Some bitches believe that if you're too handsome, you're gonna be like a threat. You know what I'm saying? Some of these bitches be like, nah, I'm gonna have too much of a problem with you. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna have to be fighting bitches all day. And some guys wouldn't even understand it. Some guys are so handsome that it's actually more so of a curse. They were blessed to such a degree to whereas they just pretty much came out of the box looking like, Ken and Bobby type of shit. But those guys sometimes have a hard time getting bitches. Men might not understand it. They believe that they see some of these supermodels and these guys. They say, "Wow, this guy, he looks like goddamn, Clark Kent or some shit." You know what I'm saying? But Fabio, I can't believe it's not butter. But this motherfucker has to. He cannot even. I've read something. Sorry, I shouldn't say read something. I've learned something back when I was studying the game. Some guys are so attractive that they cannot even lie to bitches. They can't even use certain game. They can't even tell bitches like, oh, baby, you this and you that, and they don't even that type of shit don't even work with these guys because the bitches look at them like, why are you telling me this bullshit? You trying to get some pussy or something? You don't have to do all of that shit. If you're a really attractive guy, you don't have to do all of that shit. You just need to just be yourself and keep it real, and you know what I'm saying, and keep it on a low. As far as I'm concerned, if you put too much emphasis on trying to, build a bitch up and give her all kind of compliments and some shit like that, the bitches are more likely to reject you than give you a chance because they'll be like, man, what's wrong with this guy? He looks like this, and why the fuck is he dribbling all over me? You know what I'm saying? So guys who might not be so attractive doesn't not even understand some of the sorrows that attractive men or women go through, and even women go through that as well. They could be so attractive that they have problems with men pulling up on them because men are not confident enough. Men are intimidated by them, and so again, men who are attractive know what I'm talking about, and women who are attractive know what I'm talking about as well. But again, men who have never been told that they're attractive and they've never had multiple options, this type of shit, this is impossible for an average guy to talk about trying to be celibate because these motherfuckers never had no bitches. You understand me? So it's gonna be very difficult for someone to talk about going 2 weeks, 6 days, you know what I'm saying, on some sex because they don't know when the fuck they can get some pussy ever again. But guys like Lenny Kravitz, man, hey, that motherfucker was a born superstar. You understand me?
And I too could remember at a very young age, probably from the age of 3 months old. I think about 3 months old. I remember my mom friends telling me, telling my mom, or you have a very cute or handsome son. And again, I was only 3 months old. That is humor. I was being sarcastic because I couldn't remember anything at 3 months, at 3 months years old. However, I'm just stating the fact that once you are an attractive child, a baby, most likely you would carry that on for the rest of your life, as long as you do not get on any hard drugs or you don't do anything damaging, too much drinking alcohol or things that substances that may change their physical appearance. And again, back to me, for example, like I said, I remember at 3 months years old being told, my mom being told that I would be an attractive young man. And I remember also uh, going to primary school. I remember one incident where all the girls would always want to play with me. All the girls would always kind of pick on me for some reason because, young girls, they tend to pick on boys they like, and they tend to torment them or whatever the case may be. And I remember that. I actually remember an incident when I was in primary school playing this game with kids, and I was running away and I jumped down some stairs and I literally almost broke my ankle trying to, be cool and show the girls how physically fit I was by jumping down this flight of stairs that I was not nowhere in shape or physically fit to do, but I did it anyhow. And I remember basically almost breaking my leg, having a sprained ankle for some time because I was just trying to impress these girls. And then as I went on, I remember again from being in school, and I remember always teachers or girls or other individuals commenting, and again not being the greatest looking guy in the world. However, not being at the bottom of the barrel also as well. And like I said, I remember this being said to me continuously throughout my lifetime, even as I got older, and I am fairly much older than I am that I was when I was younger, and I am definitely not in my prime, as I may say, at my maximum physical best, if I may say, because as we get older, our features change also. And there was once a time I did not have all of this Moses look. I didn't have this. I was extremely well groomed, well kept, and I am still well groomed and still well kept. But again, my image was not so barbaric or so caveman likeish, if I may say. So
I will admit, boy, when I was younger, I was pulling bitches, boy. You understand me? I mean, I still get bitches, you understand me? That's why they call me Triple P, Pimp, Puff, and Priest. But you know what I'm saying? When we are at our prime, you know what I'm saying? Our youthful years, that's when we are at our best. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, but I was vicious, man. I really was dangerous. You understand what I'm saying? Mothers had to lock up their daughters and shit. Because when they know I was coming to the house, it was like fucking they sound alarm. Triple P is out. You understand me? Lock your daughters up because it's fucking under attack. You understand me? Triple P.
but that being said, I can attest that I've been told this for some time, and from all walks of race, be it black, white, red, whatever. And again, I may not be every cup of tea. I'm just saying that if you are a guy and no one have never told you that you are handsome or you are attractive, then you most likely would never understand what it is like to have options. Now, I would also say that I was never, ever told in a million years in my life, entire life, that I was considered tall. But again, I was told that I was handsome. There are some men that actually are tall, but they are very tall, 6'4", 6'5", whatever the case may be, but they have never been told they are handsome. So everybody most likely does not have the total package. I am not the tallest. I am not the most fittest. I don't have a six pack. I don't have big muscles or anything of that sort. And however,
Hey, I far from a six pack. If I start up right now, I got a little belly going on right now. You understand what I'm saying? When I was younger, I was more on the slimmer side. I'm still considered I don't know. I'm still considered slender, if I may say, or what I'm saying. But I'm far from a six pack. You understand me? I'm more like a keg or some shit like that, or a 12 pack, or what I'm saying, a one pack or a barrel or some shit.
I was able to not just uh, maintain or be successful in the area of attracting women. I was extremely uh, proficient at it, if I may say. And for those of you who might not have a better
I just want to say this, man. You hear what the fuck I said? I said I was proficient at pulling bitches. You understand me? I didn't say I was. I said I was effective, but I said I was proficient. You understand me? So that should tell you guys something. That's why, again, how I got the name Triple P, Pimp, Prophet, Priest. It's no joke, man. You know what I'm saying? So I really was good at it. I was really good at my craft. That is why one of the reasons now I'm actually a dating coach as well. That is something that I do. Men call me for dating advice and so forth. As we go on through these videos and so forth, you guys will get a much better understanding of who I am and what I do as well.
to get a better understanding about what I'm talking about, please go ahead and watch part one. Part one is a video where I'm talking and I'm letting you guys know how did I get the name Triple P, Tripple dot P, PIMP. And that name, again, is just not a cliche. It's actually an exact representation of who I am, who I was, and I will talk a lot about that, how I got that name. So, but anyhow, with that being said, like I said, I have been told that I was exceptionally fairly okay enough to attract women all of my life. So, and I capitalized that. So, getting women was not necessarily the most difficult thing for me to do. I had other problems in my life. I had other areas in my life that I may not have been so blessed with, if I may say. However, getting women was not necessarily the most challenging one of them. So I think, if I remember clearly, looking back, I think I remember this topic is about how did I, 6 years without sex, without a relationship, and without masturbation as well. And remember, like I said, this is part three. This is going to be part three of a part one, part two, three introduction series. And this also, again, this is an astrology channel. However, because astrology is such a vast subject matter dealing with personality, if you have personality issues, if you have identity issues, problems, whatever the case may be, financial problems, relationship problems, you want to find out not just problems, but you want to find out where you fit in best, suitable for career. Just any answer basically astrology deals with. So this subject, this channel will actually cover an immense, vast plethora of subject matters as well. So back to what I was saying.
This sound really, this wind really. If I again, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know, this was my first wireless mic. I didn't have the wind guard. I didn't know. I really didn't know. Honest to God, if I knew, I would have done better. If I could have done better, I would have did it. But I didn't know. So my deepest, sincerest apologies for the sound. But I did improve. I did resolve that problem after watching the video, and I heard the sound of the wind, and I went in to find out what could I do. But again, the mic that I'm wearing did have a noise resistance suppression type thing, but I did not know that it would not stop the wind. So I figured it out a little too later down the line.
Again, because of having this, if you were male and you were not told that you were attractive, you would not understand why someone would be able to go 6 years or 9 years in Lenny Kravitz's case without having sex, because most men who are just who they would consider to be average or just barely getting by or unattractive, they most likely they cannot turn down anything at all. In fact, anything moves is game, and that is the way it is for most men that would be considered not so attractive. So if you're an average guy, you cannot fathom for the likes of you just cannot understand how could a man not go how could go a man to go 9 years, and in my case 6 years, without having sex. And I will tell you the answer to why someone like myself or Lenny Kravitz could go that amount of time. And the answer is because I have smashed. Yes, I said I have smashed more than a car test crash dummy. Like I said before, I have smashed more than a test car crash dummy. So most guys, again, who have just had one, two, three, four, five, six girls, they would never, ever, ever understand what it is to have an unlimited options, and they would never understand what it is to actually turn down or reject any type of sexual advancement from a female.
And this is what I said earlier in the very beginning. I said that I took a piece of the video from somewhere in the middle of the video. I'm not quite sure where I took it from, and I placed that video in the beginning as a trailer. And this is what we're talking about now. That very beginning was taken from this exact spot. So that is where we are. We are actually at that particular position in the video right now.
Because they too have never been in a position to do so as well. So, like I said before, Mr. Kravis, who has been, Mr. Kravis too has been in a position where he too has had more options than the average guy. So, therefore, if you are in a position where you have had more options, you would be able to reject advancements or sex from females if you uh, if they come by. But again, most guys are not in that position to do so. So with that being said, a little story. I remember basically probably around the age of, I can't remember exactly because I was fairly young, 16, no, my bad, 13. I know it's between 13, 14, 15, 16, 16 at most. I'm not quite sure, but I know I was a lot younger. I was a lot younger, and 13, 14, 15, I remember having my first sexual intercourse, and that intercourse, I can't, I know the girl was a lot older than I was, and I can't remember how old she was, but I know she was a lot older than I was at the time. But I do remember having ejaculating, and that I remember some substance that came out. It was like clear jelly or whatever the case may be, because I was very young at the time, and it was so quick. It was like flash, you know what I'm saying? It was like bam bam, two pumps, and that was it. You know, it was nothing to really talk about. I didn't perform any tricks. I didn't perform any styles. I didn't. There was no bend over. There was no lift your leg up. There was none of that. It was just boom boom, and that was a wrap. You understand me? So, but I do remember that at a very young age, and because of that, I would say that that was my very first sexual experience. And for that being said, I was pretty much just like every other guy that kind of fell in love with sex as well. But after that, years went by, many years went by. I wouldn't say years, I take that back. A few years went by, and then I was old enough and mature enough, whereas I entered my first official relationship, and then I was also sexually active in that area. But again, being fortunate enough, again, like I said, being fortunate enough that I was told that I was attractive. I always shoot for the stars. I never had a female in my life that I did not consider. At least I didn't think she was
Now you bragging now. You bragging. That's funny as shit, nigga.
was not attractive. And the average person would also say that yes, this girl is attractive also. But again, looks are subjective. But like I said before, I do not remember. I don't remember ever dating a girl that was not extremely either physically or physically uh, standard wise. Physically, I would say the minimum to my standards, I would say a seven, and that's on the lower scale. No lower than a seven, maybe eight.
Sevens on the low scale. Either eights. So anyhow, all my girls who might be whoever come across this video that I've dated, you guys should take this as a compliment. You understand me? Because I'm saying that I don't go lower than a seven. A low seven, maybe eight. So anybody, like I said, if you are watching this and you came across this video and we have dated, consider this to be a compliment. So that means I must have found you to be attractive in some way, shape, or form to meet the minimum requirements. That's some funny shit.
Either this individual was extremely, extremely beautiful facial wise, or that individual was also, or that individual may have been extremely physically, had a body really extremely, extremely physical. So my sexual journey started out fairly young, which actually gave me the exposure, my very first exposure that I needed to basically fall in love with sex, as most men do. But much later down, like I said, a few years later down, I got into my first official relationship, and that relationship was what I needed to uh, blossom my skills and so forth and so forth and so forth. But from that point on, like I was saying, most of the women that I dealt with, most people would say that would consider these females to be extremely attractive. So as time went on, my numbers grew and they grew and they grew because I had a knack for it. I had a knack for this uh, uh, attracting women, if I may say. And later down the line, I moved away, and then it became a lot easier because I moved from a very small island and I moved to the States, and then I got exposed to even more bigger players and the game and so forth, which led me into even more uh, practicing the game in reference to being a pickup artist, somewhat mock, some gigolo, a little gigolo, and eventually evolving to the PI game. And that is what I had excelled to. But by the time I had excelled to that number, my numbers were far, away far and beyond the average guy's sexual numbers. And as far as I'm concerned, for those of you who would like to know my body count number, please go ahead and watch part one. Part one, I talk about the calculator that I use to get the numbers that I have come up with today. And I think, again, you would need some scientific calculator,
Yeah.
and you would need ChatGPT, and you would need some other heavy, heavy duty scientific equipment to calculate these numbers. So, with that being said,
I don't know if you guys heard what I said. I said my body count numbers was astronomical, and I said to calculate my body count numbers, you would need Chat GPT. I think some supercomputer or some bullshit like that. That's some bullshit, nigga. I mean, the numbers really is up there now, but I mean, that was a little over exaggeration. You know what I'm saying? Chat GPT to calculate your body count numbers, and it still sounds like it may not be able to calculate that shit. There's also funny shit, dog.
I would say that the average guy, just like Lenny Kravitz, this is back to being 6 years, just like Lenny Kravitz, I would say that the average guy, in comparison to me, and I did not even have the status, I did not even have the status as Lenny Kravitz. I did not have the international fame. I didn't have the recognition. I didn't have the money. I didn't have any of that. And if my numbers were able to allow me to take a break and go 6 years because of having such exceedingly high numbers throughout my lifetime, I just cannot imagine what it would be like if I was Lenny Kravitz. So for those again guys who have not had the experience of being uh, uh, having access to women, most men may not know exactly what I'm saying. Because from a PI perspective, most men are what they would call simps, squares, and tricks. And that is the case with most men. And from my perspective, from a PI perspective, I would actually give Lenny Kravitz the utmost respect, because we all know that if there was no simps and there was no squares and there was no simps, there would be no pimps and there would be no hoes. Because pimps and hoes rely on simps, squares, and tricks. Because they are simps, squares, and tricks. Those are the guys who do not have any sexual discipline, and they cannot maintain their stability when it comes down to their sexual behaviors. They have zero control. They have very little control over their desires. That is one reason why the pornography industry has thousands, trillions of dollars goes into pornography, trillions of dollars because uh, most men are simps, tricks, and squares. So someone
And that's what I was saying again. The average guy does not have any sexual discipline. The average guy cannot sustain a X amount of time not having sex or masturbation or porn or something of that sort. That is what I'm saying. The average guy was never ever in a position to reject sex or turn down sex or to say I'm tired, because if you're an average guy, you have to take every opportunity that comes by. And so if you're a guy, like I said, if you only had a few girlfriends in your life, or if you only had a few sexual partners, you would never ever be able to understand how someone like Lenny Kravitz, or even myself, like I said, I did not even have the status, financial status, or even the fame and the fortune like Lenny Kravitz. But however, I was very, very crafty in the area. I was very skilled in the area of getting women. So if I was able to get numbers that you need chat GPT to calculate, and I had the numbers without all the fame and the fortune, and I was able to do it, you guys cannot imagine what it is for someone like Lenny Kravitz, who just had women just again trying to break this guy's door down all of his life, or most of his life. Most average guy cannot understand it. So at least I have some kind of idea why, because of my history, because of me having the exposure that I had. Like I said earlier, I was staying on an island. I went away, moved to a bigger place, a much bigger place in the States, and I've traveled and I've done so much. I've been exposed. I have had so many different opportunities to meet women from all different types of culture, walks of life. So therefore, I was not limited to just a handful of bitches. And then on top of that, I was gifted, the gift of gab and all that other shit. So it just came natural to me to just get some bitches. You understand me? So that is why I was able to pull this off, because I too, like I said, I could relate to Lenny Kravitz because of having multiple options earlier on in life. I did not have everything, like I said, that Lenny Kravitz had, but at the same time, I was fortunate enough to have the experience, if I may say, to have had the experience to get a few bitches throughout my life. So that gave me the ability to say, hey, I could take a break as well.
like Lenny Kravitz should be commended even from a former PI as myself. I would say that a man that has the ability to control his sexual urges and has the ability to not necessarily fall victim to masturbation and has the ability to be celibate and has the choice is a very, very dangerous and powerful man, because most men today are basically simps, tricks, and squares in one shape, form, or another. If you look at most men today, they are in relationships because they are simps. They are in relationships because they are squares. They are in relationships because they are tricks. Because if a man really had the opportunity to pick and choose and refuse, like most men do, most men would not put a noose around their neck and pretty much commit to X amount of time and go through some of the problems and the stress and all the nagging and all of the stuff that they go through in relationships. Is because they do it is because they have very, very little options and they cannot do any better. That is why most men do what they do. So most men who do not and have not been in a position like Lenny Kravitz, yes, they would smash or they would diss Lenny Kravitz or they would diss someone like myself and say, oh, 6 years, 9 years, and all of this. It's the reason they would say this because they cannot do it themselves. If they had the ability to do it themselves, they would have, but they cannot. So that is why some people would despise things that they cannot get. Some people would despise things that they cannot have, and some people will despise people or places and things that they cannot do. So it's best to reject psychologically. It is best to reject the thing or the person or the place that you wish you had or the thing that you wish you could do. It is much easier to reject that thing rather than just be a man or be a woman and admit and say, hey, I wish I had the ability to go 6 years. I wish I had the ability to go 9 years, but most men can't. But again, the reason, like I'm saying before, most men can't do it is because they are in a position where they have never had the opportunity to pick, choose, and refuse.
So that was also an interesting fact that I said earlier. I'm just going to recap on that as well. What I said was that most men are in relationships solely because of having the opportunity to get sex. Women might not believe that. Some, most of the men are involved with you only because they have the opportunity to get sex. And I said also, if a man had the opportunity to get sex frequently from multiple women at will, that is why you have players. Players don't necessarily just settle down just like that. You have to fight and put blood, sweat, and tears to get a player, at least a true player, a true alpha male, a true high status male. You can't just get that motherfucker to commit just to that. You could get some simp any day. You could get some trick. You could get some square any day to commit and want to marry you or whatever. I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with marriage. I'm not saying to you the more qualified the guy is, the more higher the guy SMV is, sexual market value, the more difficult it is going to be for that guy to commit. Because why would a guy commit who has the opportunity to get just about any bitch? If a guy is a multi-millionaire, hypothetically speaking, a multi-millionaire, very very attractive, what the fuck? Why should he fuck with you? What is so special about you when he could actually get just about any bitch? That is what people fail to understand, especially women. They don't understand that the men that they want, most of the men that they want, the men that they want are on a different league. They're on a different level. They Why should a man that has all of these things fuck with you? And that's what we're talking about. So most of the guys that are in relationships, they are in those relationships because they cannot do any better. Point blank.
I'm moving back to my spot right now, location wise. Yes, they had a little difficulty just now. But anyhow, back to what I was saying. Most men do not have the ability to pick, choose, and refuse, so they would never in a million years understand what it's like to go X amount of time, not even 1 week. Most men do not have the ability to go 1 week without having sexual intercourse. One day, most men would have to go and masturbate if they do not have sexual intercourse. So again, like I said before, that is the reason why the porn industry is a trillion dollar industry, because most men are weak. So to diss somebody like Lenny Travis and say that, that is whack, to be able to not to go that long celibate, that is asinine, if I may say, because that means that we are we are disgracing men for having sexual discipline. We are disgracing men for having the ability to not just be simps and tricks and squares. And you're hearing this from a former PI. So that is again, that is asinine times 10. What are we telling our young men? What are we telling our kids in the future? What are we telling our young men? Are we telling them to be victims of sex, to be weak, to have no say, to have no control? That is exactly what we are saying when a man like myself comes out and speaks on the behalf of being celibate and being happy and being in love with himself and not actually having to have sex because he have just done so much damage in that area for X amount of time. It is fair to say that it is okay to say that that individual can take a break. Because imagine, like I said, if the average guy cannot even fathom how much women Lenny Kravitz has had in his lifetime. The average man cannot even think. And again, like I said, from my perspective, the average guy cannot even think about how much women I had, and I did not have the financial status, the fame, and so forth and so forth and so on.
And so let me make a point before I goes too far into the video. Like I said, it's somewhat discouraging and a big disappointment because a guy like Lenny Kravitz, or even myself, or any guy for that matter of fact, who wants to practice celibacy, and then he's met with some type of resistance, or he's met with someone making fun. Oh, you trying to go not have sex? Oh, you trying to be a monk? Oh, you trying to do this? That is not a good thing. That is a very bad thing. What are we telling our young men? What are we teaching our young men that want to be able to practice some sexual discipline and not want to have all the bitches and hoes like me? And what are we telling our young men that who is trying to actually have some type of discipline to where they are abstaining from sex for some time, and then they're gonna be met with people making fun of them or laughing. Oh, you haven't had sex before. Oh, you this and oh, you that, and that is not a cool thing. I think that's really a very bad thing that someone, even like I said, Lenny Kravitz, a super mega star like Lenny Kravitz, would go and be criticized for not having sex. And I would even speak for myself. I just recently, I wouldn't say recently, but I just recently exposed that secret about myself. I was not telling everybody that I was being celibate. I literally just told a few people about it, and then I said, hey, you know what? I started the YouTube video thing and all that, so I said, you know what? Let me use that as some type of content, and let me talk about something that I experienced. But again, I was not telling anybody about that, because I remember telling a girl some time back. I remember telling this girl a secret. A friend of mine, I told a secret. I said, hey, you know what? I haven't had sex. This was some time back. I said, hey, I haven't had sex for, I think it was, I think I was in at 4 years at the time. I wasn't even at 6 years. I told this girl that, hey, I didn't have sex for 4 years. And man, she looked like she was cool with it and everything. And lo and behold, as soon as I walked away, she told somebody, and someone told somebody, and someone told somebody, and then it came right back to me, and I was like, God damn, I can't even tell the bitches this, because the bitches are gonna look at me like, what the fuck? What the fuck? You haven't had sex in this amount of time? Bitches, look here, man. Hey, man, they call me Triple P, man. I could get bitches. You think I can't get a bitches? You must be motherfucking mad. You understand me? But anyhow, like I was saying, so I told somebody about this, and then this person went behind my back and told somebody else, and then I said to myself, you know what, I have to keep this shit a secret. But then after a while I said, you know what, fuck it, I'm just gonna let the people know, it's a good practice that you could try to practice. You don't have to go 6 years or anything of that sort. You don't have to go 6 months. You could go 6 days, you could go 6 weeks, you could do whatever. You could even try to go 6 hours. You understand what I'm saying? But the moral of the story is, you need to develop some type of sexual discipline at one point or another. At least somewhere down the line, you should try to practice some type of sexual discipline. That's all I'm saying.
And again, if the average guy wants to compete with me and far as numbers is concerned, you would have to add your numbers up. You would have to add your sons' numbers up, your sons, their grandchildren, their great grandchildren, and add all of those numbers up, and you still cannot get my type of body count numbers. That's how it is, and that's because I was born to do what I do. You understand me? And from an astrology perspective, I'm just gonna say something from astrology.
What the fuck? I don't. I don't want to remind us. I don't want to remind us, but I don't want to go back because I don't want to keep going back. But what the fuck? I don't know if you guys hear what I said. I was talking about my body code numbers, and I said that if an average guy wants to compete with me, they have to get their numbers, their sons' numbers, their sons, and their great grand. That's a lot of goddamn numbers, man. It's a bullshit. That's a little over exaggeration here, but you know what I'm saying. But it's up there. You know what I'm saying.
Perspective to get you guys to understand why my numbers was just not just accident. From an astrology perspective, there might be individuals who don't understand astrology or not know astrology at the time, but that is what I do, and I'm an astrologer and I teach classes and all of that. But for those who understand astrology, I have Leo in my 11th house. My 11th house of groups and friendships and mass organizations. That's big groups of people. I have Leo in there, and Leo is the sign associated with the fifth house, and the fifth house is associated with romance, party, fun, recreation, dating, procreation, kids, and things of that sort. So, and I have Leo in there, and Leo is ruled by the sun, and the sun. So I have my Leo sign, which again has to do with partying and procreation and dating and so forth. I have that in a house. That means that I would have a vast amount of dating experience. I could have a vast amount of romance. I could have a vast amount of friendships. I could have a vast amount of procreation. I could have a vast, just a group, a big group, a harem of bitches and hoes, if I may say. So that is what I have in my natal chart. For those of you again who understand some astrology, I have Leo in my 11th house, and the 11th house is ruled by groups and organizations and people and just mass amounts of people. And again, the fifth house has something to do with procreation. Some might even say sex. But sex to me is associated with the ninth house, but you could add sex into it. But again, it just says that I was destined to be a Casanova, if I may say. It was destined for me to have a very vast and abundance of sexual, romantic, and just love life, expansive, extremely expansive dating life, if I may say. So if I was able to do all of this with no not having any fame and fortune on the magnitude that Mr. Lenny Kravitz had, I cannot imagine. So if you look at, for example, I'm not
And just for the record, I'm going to go back very briefly. What I said was that, again, as an astrologer, the chart that I showed you guys earlier, I am saying that my chart, my astrology natal birth chart, says that I was destined to pull bitches and hoes. You understand me? I was destined to party. I was destined to have multiple groups of relationships and groups of intimacy partners and different things of that sort. And that is literally the truth. That is what my chart said, that I would have an abundance of romantic relationships, affairs, and different things of the sort. So that is what I'm saying from an astrology perspective. That is why I'm able to help my clients when they come to me for dating problems, with dating problems and situations like that. I'm able to go and look at the chart. I'm also able to see, what I'm able to look at the chart and say what their strengths and their weaknesses is going to be, if they're going to have problems in the area of relationships, if they're going to struggle in that area, or they're going to have abundance of relationships and dating and romance and sex and things of the sort. I would be able to see that from the chart as well. So what I'm saying to you is, it was my destiny, like I said, to be a Casanova.
I'm not calling any names. I'm just saying, if you look at the typical rapper today, if you look at the typical rapper, I'm just throwing names out there to say, Lil Wayne, for example. You cannot imagine, the average guy cannot imagine uh, how much women Lil Wayne had, and still have to this day. How many women? These guys have groupies. Lil Wayne, Chris Brown, and all of these guys. No one can imagine the amount of women that throw themselves at these rappers, Drake and whoever else. Even the guys who might not even you don't even have to be attractive, in a sense. You don't have to be physically attractive. You can, what I'm saying, you get the fame and you get the name and you get the jewels. You understand what I'm saying? And you get to go. You understand me? So, but fathom the average guy cannot fathom that being the case. So which
So that's another factor again. Rappers and A-list celebrities, even BC celebrities, famous individuals who, movie stars, athletic, basketball, football players, athletes, and things of that sort, who have been, who have made a big name for themselves, who have make a lot of money and so forth. These guys, it doesn't even make a difference how they look. They could be big, they could be whatever, and these guys still could get more bitches than the average guy. And the average guy, that is why you see some men who may not be the most physically attractive guy, but they do have some money and different things going for them as well. They get a lot of bitches as well. So that's what I'm saying. If you have things going for you, you don't have to be the most attractive guy in the block. You could still get abundance of bitches. So again, stars, like I said, guys like Drake and all those guys, Chris Brown and so forth. You guys can't even imagine how much bitches are lining up to fuck these guys. In fact, as far as I'm concerned, Chris Brown is a guy that women pay to take photos with this guy. So that should tell you what time it is. I don't know if you guys remember the last time a bitch even took you out for something to eat, and there are women paying thousands of dollars to actually sleep with guys like Chris. Not sleep, sorry, take pictures with guys like Chris Brown.
Which also brings me to my another point that I would say that, and again, my respect to Ice T, because this is not a this or no no at all. I'm trying to no way, because I'm not in a position to diss a man of Ice T of his caliber. And like I said, Ice T is a OG, highly respectable in the community, movie, film, whatever else, a businessman. When Ice T was in the game, I think around '83. Uh, I was probably around 10. I was still, I was, I'm saying, I was still playing in dirt. You understand me? So I can't even know where I could say anything negative about Mr. T. However, I would say that, Mr. T, he was the one who basically rejected uh, uh, Mr. Kravis' ability to go 9 years of celibacy. And I'm sure Mr. T also had his fair share of bitches and hoes also, because we all know that Mr. T was in the game also, and he was a well-renowned player in the game, associated with the much bigger world-renowned pimps. Unlike I was never on that level, to have such fame in the game. So I cannot even remotely try to say anything negative about Mr. Ice T. However, let's say, for example, I'm just giving you guys an illustration here. Let's say you take Mr. Ice T, and you take Mr. Lenny Kravitz at the peak of their game, the peak of their age, and say, I don't know what age, there is a big age difference, there's a big age difference, a big age gap, because I think Mr. Ice T is probably 67 years old, and Mr. Lenny Kravitz is 60. But Lenny Kravitz, again, was a naturally born Casanova. And, up to this very day, although he's retired and from the game and all of that, I am sure you, Mr. Kravitz, is in better shape than the average 25-year-old man. Mr. Kravitz, if you watch some of his videos, the exercises that this man does, this man stands, everything he does is upside down. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so like I was saying again earlier, if you guys go and check out Mr. Lenny Kravitz today, however old he may be, I'm not quite sure how old he is still in tip-top shape for a man of his age. He has taken extremely great care of his body, as he has not fallen to the wayside on drugs and alcohol, and even women. He have done a very, very good job, a great job, if I may say, at being a role model of a star, someone who had the fame, had the fortune, but never actually crumbled at, due to the magnitude of success that he had. He did not allow drugs to take over. He did not allow women to take over. He did not allow his fame to go to his head and just be destructive like most artists would do. So that is something, again, I just highly, highly, highly want to commend Mr. Kravitz on, because, like I said, it is one thing to reject bitches when you when you do have the opportunity to reject them, and you reject them. That is one thing, and that is different from a guy who cannot get any bitches and hoes at all. That is a big, big, big difference. So Mr. Kravitz, again, mad, mad, mad respect goes out to you, sir.
He's a gymnast, so the average guy cannot by no means put themselves in such a position to say that they can do the things that Mr. Kravitz can do. So again, this man is still fit, despite the fact being 60 years old. He still has his fame. He still is considered to be a sexual icon, at least in my book. And and on the island, we say there's something that we say. We say that not like in man. That is something that we say when we talk about men, and we give men compliments or something of the sort. We try to say that this is not a like in man situation, and that is not the case at all. Because if that was the case, I definitely would say, no, that is not the case. This is not a like in man situation. I am just giving credit where credit is due. For example, I would say another.
And so what I said was, again, on island we have a saying that, like in man, that's when, a man, maybe compliments another man, maybe too much, or maybe looks at a man or whatever. And that's what I'm saying. This is not a like in man situation at all. They call me Triple P, pimp, prophet, and priest. You understand me? So I'm just giving credit where credit is due, and that is what we should try to strive for. We should try to, as men, we should try to develop sexual discipline. We should try to teach our young men to have sexual discipline and not be weak simps and tricks and squares for some sex. So that is one of the major problems we have today. That is why we have some men were willing to go to great lengths and kill another man, because of sex. Oh, you fucked my bitch, or you did this to my girl, or some bullshit, and pretty much take another life and throw away their life just because of not having the ability to walk away and be able to say, hey, I could actually get another bitch. So this thing that I'm talking about is not just a harmless thing, not having sexual discipline. You could actually do something very grievous that could ruin your life or even take another life as well. So keep that in mind. This is something that we should commend men for, not look down at men. So again, this is not a like and man situation. This is solely 110% giving credit where credit is due.
Another individual I could think of again, because again, beauty no matter where you go in parts of the world. There are black beautiful people, there are Asian beautiful people. Despite the fact we all being a part of the human race, I'm just saying there are white and Cajun beautiful people. There, everyone from every race has beautiful people. So, but again, we're all a part of the human race, and I don't want to be segregating race by separating beauty by race. However, another person that came to my mind is Miss Felicia Rashad. If you guys know Miss Felicia Rashad, she was a former actor on the Cosby Show. She was Mr. Cosby's wife. If you guys remember that show, Mr. Cosby, a famous show, everybody know Mr. Cosby, the Cosby Show. But if you take a look at Felicia Rashad, I think she is actually 67 also. She's the same age as Mr. Ice-T. But the moral of the story is Felicia Rashad was most likely, not, I'm sorry, not even most likely, because she is still very beautiful today. So I could imagine when she was born, she was, like I said, she was beautiful from birth. And then when she was beautiful from birth, and she's still beautiful now at 67, just naturally a beautiful woman. So
So that's another example right there. Miss Felicia Rashad. I'm not quite sure how old is she today, but again, that is another perfect example of a naturally beautiful person. Again, those of you who may not, I'm sure again everyone all across the world have heard of the Cosby Show and Mr. Cosby, and especially after having some type of legal situation as well, further made him to be recognized worldwide. But again, Miss Felicia Rashad was Bill Cosby's wife, and she was absolutely beautiful. And again, we have seen her. We cannot even imagine how she looked when she was in her early teens, in the prime of her beauty. Because again, she is still beautiful today, and that is an example of another person that I thought of that would be considered a naturally God gifted beautiful person.
but that is what I'm saying. If you are a girl and you are not ever being called pretty or you have not been called beautiful, you would not understand what it is to be a beautiful woman. You would not understand what it is to have men pouring themselves over you, literally giving their souls to you. You would never understand what that is like because you are not technically, by standards, what they would call a beautiful woman. So you do not understand what that is like to have men pouring themselves over you, trying to throw their bank book at you, trying to tear their wallets out, tear their pockets off to give you it from birth. You do not understand what that is like. So therefore, imagine if a woman like Felicia Rashad or any other beautiful woman for that matter of fact I could go on and on, Halle Berry and so forth and so forth. There's a lot of women that age very well and they're still beautiful in the age that they are at today because they were naturally gifted from Venus. They were naturally beautiful women from birth. There are men that way also. However, again, the people that are beautiful, if I may say, certain doors open for them, certain people treat them a certain way. Attractive people are treated a totally different way than someone that may not be so attractive. And
And so, like I was saying again, just like I said, if a man was never told he was handsome or he was sexy or something of that sort, he would not understand what it is to have multiple options. And so the same thing also applies to a female. If a woman was born from birth and she was never told that she was pretty, she was never told that she was sexy, yes, men will still want to sleep with you because men are thirsty dogs. Most men will sleep with anything that moves. If you put a wig on a pig, a motherfucker will fuck it. You understand me? So most men do not care that much about looks. I remember a friend of mine saying that pussy doesn't have any face, and that was one of the most asinine things that I've actually heard in a very long time. So what he was saying is that he doesn't care about how a bitch looks physically, if she's attractive, what type of body she has, how she looks in the face or whatever. He just is concerned about the sex, the not even the body. He's not even concerned if the bitch is big, small, round, tall. If the bitch looks like a goddamn coconut tree, he does not care. All he cares about is the pussy. So that's what I'm saying to you is women who are like the late and great Kevin Samuels used to say, if you are five at best, you would not understand what a seven or eight or nine goes through. Women that were born beautiful, men were gawking at them from birth. Men were pretty much trying to get with these women. From these women were legally at age to be sexually active. When women, some men were waiting for some women to turn 18. From these women were 12 and 13. You understand me? Some men were waiting for these women to actually reach the age or that they could be legally approach them. So women that are attractive are tired. They are so tired of men approaching them all their lives. Women that are attractive, they hear how pretty they are all day. Women that are attractive hear how sexy they are all day. Women hear this all day that are attractive. Now, if you are a woman and you have never been told that you are sexy or attractive, yes, a motherfucker will want to smash. Yes, you could have multiple men just want to smash, but they are not, like I said, they are not tearing their pockets off to take you out. They are not buying you expensive gifts. They are not taking you on trips. They are not putting you on no first class flight to fucking wherever parts of the world. They're not doing any of that shit for you. They are putting in the bare minimum requirements. They are taking top notch bitches, 7, 8s and 9s and 10s. They are taking these bitches to 3, 4 and 5-star restaurants, and they are taking bitches that are average to Kentucky Fried motherfucking chicken. You understand me? So if you are average bitch, you still would not even understand, just like the guys do not understand what it is to be called handsome and have women pretty much options to get women all their lives. Men that are not attractive do not have that. They have never had that luxury, and the same thing would apply to women as well. So if you have never had men pretty much, wanting to always spend on you, take you out, and all of these other shit like that, you would not understand. So a woman like Felicia Rashad, that is one of the reasons. Even her beauty, I'm sure Halle Berry and other women, their beauty was actually something that actually opened the door for them as well. Like I said, people that are attractive, they are treated a lot differently than people that are not attractive. Some men that are even a certain height, they have statistically shows that men that are over a certain height, they get different job opportunities for men that are not as tall, and some men that are even that has the whole full package deal. They're attractive, tall, and money and everything. Just the doors that would open for these men, and even the women, the doors that would open for an attractive woman, that same door will be shut cold as ice for a bitch who is five at best.
Unfortunately, that is the way it is. So again, uh, let me check something once again. I'm just gonna move around and check something on here. Yeah, it's just a little view that's giving you guys a little brief view. So, like I was saying, uh, now let's go back to the question what I was saying about uh, Mr. Ice T rejecting uh, Lenny Kravitz's ability to go 9 years. I apologize, 9 years of celibacy. Now let's say when Ice T was at his peak at like I'm not saying right now at 35. I'm just making this number up at 35, and Lenny Kravitz was at 35 at the peak of their game, at the peak of their attractiveness. 35, even 40. I'm not even sure because again, Lenny Kravitz is also extremely physically fit and youthful looking at this very day, despite the fact he's being 60. But again, I'm just saying, if Lenny Kravitz was 35 years old, uh, and Ice T was 35 years old, and you put those two guys together, and you gave those guys the same amount of everything, the same amount of pimp game, the same amount of money, the same amount of exact every single thing, and you put those guys in the pimp game and say, go out there and get some bitches and hoes. I want you the guys to tell me who do you think would get the most bitches and hoes, Lenny Kravitz or Mr. Ice T? If Lenny Kravitz once again and Mr. Ice T has the exact amount of physical, sorry, not physical, mouthpiece, had the exact amount of money, you gave them exactly everything, the exact car, whatever the case may be, and you tell them go out and put some bitches and hoes. Tell me who do you think would get the most bitches and hoes? Tell me who do you think would have the highest body count? Tell me, please, someone tell me who do they think would be the pimp of the year, the mark of the year, the gigolo of the year. So
And so I don't know if you guys, I really want you to think about what I just said. I said that if you go back in time and you stand up Mr. Lenny Kravitz and Mr. Ice T side by side, and I'm sure again because Mr. T was actually in the game. You know what I'm saying, for as an official P. So so it's obviously he would have more game. I would think that he would have more game than Mr. Kravitz. That is why I said if you give those guys the same exact mouthpiece, you give Mr. Kravitz the same amount of game as Mr. T. You give each guy has the same amount of money, the same amount of everything at the age of their prime, around 30, 35, when they were at the peak of their attractiveness and so forth. And you put those two guys together, who do you guys think would get the most bitches? Do you think Lenny Kravitz at the peak of his game would get more bitches than Mr. T, or Mr. T would get more bitches than Mr. Lenny Kravitz? And that's what we're talking about here today. Again, Mr. T, I'm sure that he had a limited amount of bitches and hoes as well, especially having a background from the game, from the streets, because Mr. T is hardcore as well. So again, we're not taking anything away from Mr. T. I'm just saying if you give those two guys the same exact amount of credentials, the amount of money, the amount of status, the amount of fame, and you put those on equal footing and you say, hey, go out there and get some bitches and some hoes, who do you think will be able to get the most bitches and hoes, Mr. Ice T or Mr. Lenny Kravitz? And even if you look at it today, who do you think will be able to get more bitches and hoes at the age that they are at right now? If you look at Mr. Ice T and you look at Mr. Lenny Kravitz, who do you think is most likely to get the most bitches and hoes?
that is my point. So my point is Lenny Kravitz is a man should be admired for having the ability to go 9 years and being able to go 9 years because of having options also. And that is my point. If you could say that you're celibate but you don't have no options, you just pretty much on some, you on a break because you just waiting for the next thing to come about, but you're not necessarily in a position to say that you are actually technically celibate. No, that is not the case at all. I would consider being celibate someone who has the ability to get bitches and hoes, or males, or in a girl perspective, to get a husband, a wife, or a boyfriend, and they just continuously choose not to do so. So that's what I would consider to be a real, actual act of celibacy.
And like I said again earlier, a true act of celibacy is having options. We're not talking about going through a break, transitioning from one relationship to the next, whereas you just came out of a relationship and now you're taking a little, 2 months break because you're just waiting for the next right person to come along, and then as soon as that person comes along, you're gonna be sexually active again. No, you're just transitioning from a relationship, and then that does not that so that technically doesn't really count as being celibate, and then not having the options to get have sex as a male or female, not having options to get sex, but you want to have sex, you want to be in a relationship, but you just can't because not meeting the minimum requirements to get the sex. That does not count as celibate at all. If you went 5 years not having sex, but you could not get any bitches and hoes, but you wanted to get some bitches and hoes, that does not count. It counts when you are in a position like Mr. Lenny Kravitz to get some bitches. I am sure, like I said, Mr. Kravitz could get some bitches and some hoes today as we speak. And so, like Mr. Kravitz, like I said, a man in his stature, his credentials, his status, having the options to get bitches and hoes, but choosing to go that long without sex is true celibacy. And I would say the same thing would apply for myself. I too have always had options. I've never been in a position to where I've never had an option to get a bitch or a hoe. You understand me? I too feel like I could walk down the street wearing a garbage bag and I could at least get a bitch to look twice. You understand me? Yeah, I could put some trash on, wrap my hair up in some goddamn toilet tissue, some type of bullshit, you understand me? A bitch will still at least give me a second goddamn glance, you understand me? Because that's what it is, you understand what I'm saying? So, anyhow, with that being said, let me move it along.
So most men cannot be celibate because they have never ever had been in a position to return down some bitches and hoes. Not one. They cannot do it, not one time. So they cannot imagine what it is to go 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, in my case, 7 years, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, in Lenny Kravitz's case. They cannot imagine it, and that is why they would reject it rather than admire it because they just simply can't do it. So that is how and why I am able to go 6 years without having sex, nor seeking a relationship, nor masturbating. Because it's
And see, and that's another factor too. Like I said, I also uh, most people tend to reject the things that they cannot get. If you want something you can't get it, sometimes we say, "Oh, I don't want it anyhow. I don't like that thing," because you say that because you can't do it. So you might have someone like a man or someone may come and reject or make fun of a guy who like Mr. Kravitz or even myself. I mean, they wouldn't. Usually, I'm not. No one ever really made fun of me, but for the most part, you may have a man rather than look at a man who is able to abstain from sex with admiration and give that man the respect that he deserves. Some men will actually try to make fun or reject that guy, not because the guy is doing something wrong, it's because they simply cannot do it themselves. That is what we're talking about. People rejecting something, the thing that they can't get. They just like the fox trying to get the grapes, and the fox wasn't able to get the grapes, so he said, "Oh, I didn't want the grapes anyhow because the grapes are sour." Just like some guys who try to hit on some bitches and the bitch reject them, and then because they can't handle the rejection, they they respond with some negativity, bitch, 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 and they talk to the bitch in some negative, derogatory way because the bitch rejected them. But they really wanted it from the start. They wanted the bitch. If the bitch did give them opportunity, they would have actually took the opportunity. But because the bitch rejected them, now they are like, now they're like, no, we didn't. I didn't want you anyhow, bitch. So that's what we're talking about. So most guys are rejecting the situation is because they just cannot do it, not because they don't admire it or they don't, say that. Wow, I wish I. That's what I'm saying. And rather than say I wish I could do it myself, they would just rather reject the whole notion of celibacy.
It's one thing to say that you're celibate and you still masturbate. It's one thing to say that you are not in a relationship but you still masturbate. But it's a difference when you are celibate and you do not pursue any relationships and you do not pursue any other sexual activities and you do not masturbate to resolve that issue, to calm that sensation down as well.
And so, which brings me to another point as well. So it's a difference now. Like I said, celibacy, like I said, is not just, surviving and struggling, trying to make it to another day to go without having sex. We're talking about having the options, but choosing not to be in a relationship and also not pursuing relationships or not pursuing pornography, not pursuing masturbation, because it doesn't make any sense to be celibate and masturbate every day. It doesn't make sense to try to be celibate but you're still pursuing bitches and hoes. It doesn't make sense to be even a female trying to be celibate but still trying to enter a relationship. The whole purpose of celibacy is to be alone, to spend some time alone, to be in isolation, and to put that time, that energy, and that effort into oneself, self love, self care, and so forth and so on. So you cannot pursue celibacy and still really or really active trying to have sex and still active trying to be in a relationship and still active masturbating and watching porn and trying to do all of these things to alleviate the suffering that you may be encountering by going the long distance by not having sex. We're talking about being comfortable not being in a relationship, being comfortable not having sex, being comfortable not releasing through masturbation, through pornography, and things of that sort as well, and being comfortable not actually pursuing a relationship at all. That is the ultimate true celibacy.
So, with that being said, that is where I am coming from. And for those of you guys, again, who think that they are celibate, but they are just in between relationships, and as soon as a relationship pops up, they're back into it. And as soon as they have a sexual opportunity comes up, they are sexual again. No, you technically, you are not really celibate. You are just in between relationships. So with that being said, I think that again, if you see Lil Wayne, I'm just giving an example. If Lil Wayne could smash, Chris Brown, smash, anyone you could think of in the rap game, anyone who is pretty much up there has the ability to smash. So imagine if Lil Wayne could do it. Imagine if Lil Wayne numbers are through the roof and astronomical. What do you think about Mr. Lenny Kravitz? His ability and his numbers. You cannot.
Now, I was using Lil Wayne for an example. If you see a guy like Lil Wayne could get tons and tons and tons of bitches and hoes, what the fuck do you think about Mr. Lenny Kravitz? What options do you think Mr. Lenny Kravitz had at the peak of his game versus Lil Wayne? Yes, Lil Wayne may have had the options of a different breed of bitches because we're dealing with younger bitches these days and these bitches who like rap music and all that. These bitches are on a different, they are different from the breed of bitches that Lenny Kravitz had because of the age generations difference. The women were a lot different now back in the day, so we cannot compare per se the women that Lil Wayne, the little TD boppers and the little, what I'm saying, the younger women, the groupies and all that. But I'm just saying that Lil Wayne, if Lil Wayne could do it, imagine the amount of bitches. If imagine if Lenny Kravitz was in Lil Wayne's era today with that same fame and fortune, who do you think will get the most bitches, Lil Wayne or Mr. Lenny Kravitz? That's my point. What I'm trying to make right here. Again, my respect goes out to Lil Wayne because he, like I said, these motherfuckers get bitches lined up from here to Japan, and the average guy can't even imagine what it's like to be in these guys' position. I'm just trying to give you guys an understanding of who Mr. Lenny Kravitz is and the ability that he had. It's not like this guy couldn't get no bitches and hoes. This guy had opportunities to the sky and choose to be on a celibate run. Look at his ex-wife, Miss Bonet. I can't Lisa Bonet. I think that was her name or so forth. Very beautiful young lady as well. You understand me? I think they had a daughter as well too. But look at the caliber of women that Mr. Lenny Kravitz had in reference to his life. So we came in and we're talking about a higher tier caliber man with one of the most highest SMV market value. Like I said, all of the rappers and so you could most of the rappers you could think of, those guys might have money and fame and all of that stuff, but they are never considered to be sexual icons. Mr. Kravitz was a sexual icon. When women saw Mr. Kravitz, bitches were willing to get down. They were willing to get wet. You understand me? So that does not apply to these some of these rappers. Yes, they could get bitches because that's the generation they're in today. You understand me? Because of cars and all that shit. And Mr. Kravitz didn't even have all this shit. Mr. Kravitz didn't have no Lambo. He didn't have no goddamn no sparkly Rolex and all that shit. You understand me? He just had his sex appeal, he had his music, and he had his style and all that shit, and he had his fans. So imagine if he even had the shit with these rappers of the day. You understand me? So we're talking about a man of a different breed and a different caliber. And again, this is not a like and man situation. You understand me? I just want to clear it up. I just want you guys to understand when a man like that is able to do something like that. We need to do some a little bow or to give a little bow and do a little respect. You understand me?
Imagine, and that is my point. So my point is, my numbers, because I had the ability to do so. After a period of time, I decided to take a break and do the same thing that Mr. Lenny Kravitz has done, and has been an exemplary. I thought I was getting tired of it now. Example that we all should look and try to strive. We should not just throw ourselves at any sexual opportunity that comes about, because sex is a real, very, very sacred and spiritual act that we should just not just give ourselves, be it male or female, to just any individual that comes along. And I think we should take our sexual actions and our sexual behaviors very, 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 very serious. And we should not just take them lightly and just act as if, we could just sleep around and do whatever we like and believe that we can just sleep around with the world, and there's no consequences. And another thing that brought to my attention, I am very, very fortunate. I am so grateful. I thank God that I was in a position where, despite the fact that my numbers are breathtaking and mind-boggling, I thank God. You understand me?
You could dog shit. This motherfucker say his body count numbers was breathtaking and mind-boggling. You understand me? But that's for real though. I do thank God, man. I do thank God that after all that damage I did, man, you know what I'm saying? I came out clean. I never, you know what I'm saying? Let me continue on with this anyhow.
That I came out safe and I came out unscathed, unharmed. I didn't get burned. I never caught an STD. Thank God. And after from doing all of this, that's one of the reasons I said to myself, I think it is time for me to take a break and quit whilst I am ahead. Because there are some individuals that actually had sex one time and they slept with the wrong person and they got burnt. One time and they slept with the wrong male or female and they ended up with some life-threatening disease. And that is the case. Many individuals has done so. So I would say that I came out extremely I was extremely fortunate to have the numbers that I have and be able to retire without actually, like I said, without getting a bump or a lump. So,
And so, hey, that's the truth, because someone like myself, like I said, who body count you need to get chat GBT, supercomputers and shit like that, and the stars and the moon needs to be aligned up to calculate my body count numbers. I was so fortunate enough. I never caught a cold. I never caught any STD. I never. Thank you. I've had some wood around. I would knock on that right now. You know what I'm saying? You know, without being a pervert. You know what I'm saying? Pun intended. But like I was saying, I was so fortunate enough to have such a high body count, but I've never ever caught an STD, and that was one of the reasons why when I decided to go on a celibacy streak, I just said to myself, I said, you know what, man, hey. I've had so much women in my life. I've had so many sexual partners. I've been so fortunate enough to never ever caught. I never caught an STD. I think it's best that I take a break and I need to take some time off and wise I'm ahead. I should quit wise I'm ahead and I should work on some other things, and that is exactly what I did, because some people, like I said, some people are not as fortunate. Some individuals could have sex with somebody one time. Some individuals were not even didn't even never had sex and they were born. Unfortunately, they were born with STDs and no one, they didn't even have an option. They got it from their parents and certain things. I know individuals like that who were actually born with certain diseases and they did not do anything. They came in the world as innocent children and they was born with life-threatening diseases, and so the same thing applies to players, or the players, the marks and the gigolos. The more sexual activity you have, the more sexual partners you engage with, the probability of you catching a disease is exponentially higher than somebody who has no sexual partners or very low sexual partners or even one sexual partner. And again, I'm not saying that you cannot get an STD from having one sexual partner, because you could have one sexual partner and that partner could go there and cheat on you and they could bring you back something as well. So that could happen too. But I'm not saying that, that is not the case all the time, but you could have one partner and still catch a disease. But when we're talking about someone like myself with numbers, like I said, astronomical and breathtaking and mind boggling numbers, and to come out without nothing. I'm talking about never any type of bump, lump, crab, lice, any type shit. Never ever in the history of the world. I am so grateful. That is why, like I said, I said to myself, I think I should retire wise I'm ahead and rather just push this until the wheel fall off and then my life is just ruined. I think I should just take a break and put that energy and effort into other things, and that is what I did. So again, that is why I also could understand someone like Mr. Kravitz, who have had done such damage, extensive damage in the field with women. I could see someone like that again just wanting to take some time off and wanting to say, hey, spend some isolation, because if he had the ability to do it, he still could do it. He still has the fame. He still has some fortune. He's not at the bottom of the barrel. Up to this day, he still has options. So I understand. I could relate to why someone like Mr. Gravett could go 15 years. I could, because I too, like I said, have done extensive amount of damage. Like I said earlier, I've smashed more than a test car crash dummy. So the average guy cannot say that. Like I said, I've smashed more than the average guy. You have to take the average guy, add their numbers up with their son's number, with their son's number, and even their great son's numbers, and they still can't compare to Triple P in that aspect as far as the body count numbers. I'm talking about some serious shit. I can't tell you guys how much effort I went into. I was fortunate enough to be in certain places. I was fortunate enough to have a lifestyle where I was consistently surrounded by women. I was in a position where I had certain things in my favor, and it was my job to get bitches and hoes. That is what I did for a living at some point. You understand me? So the average guy cannot understand what the fuck I'm talking about either as well. But the moral of the story is, I was so grateful that I came out without actually getting any type of disease, and I just thank God from the highest gratitude in that area as well.
that being said, please once again, this is part 3 of our video introduction for the 7 Seals Astrology Prophetic video. And this will be the very last introduction video. And from this point on, I'm going to go into much more greater subject matters in reference to astrology, in reference to life. This is going to be a holistic channel, so you could expect me to talk about anything. At 1 minute, I may be quoting the scripture, and at 1 minute, I might be talking about some bitches and hoes. And speaking of bitches and hoes, I will end on this because something else came to my mind in reference to the scriptures. Most people, they said that most people ask me about the pimp game. A lot of people ask me about the pimp game, about the origination of the pimp game. This is the last thing I'm going to say because this is a very long video, and I did not necessarily expect it to be this long. However, whatever it takes. So I really appreciate everyone who stuck around this long and who is still watching the video. I really do appreciate it. Thank you very much for sticking around this long and this far. So again, to answer this question, someone asked me how pimping began, and I would like to use this is a very a very uncommon story, I guess, if I may say, historical story. But there are two versions of where pimping really began, and some people would even go back to the Bible and then use the story of Abraham and Sarah. And again, I'm not here to talk about, because to me, all of those stories are allegorical anyhow. So that's the principle behind those stories. I'm not taking any of the stories literally, so I'm not here to offend anybody's religion. I'm just speaking from an allegorical perspective. So again, Sarah and Abraham, if you guys remember Sarah, Abraham was Abraham and Sarah was Sarai before their names were both changed. And if I remember clearly, Abraham was a descendant of Noah, and Noah, we all know Noah and the flood and so forth. And I think Noah had a son named Shem. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And I think Abraham came from the lineage of Shem. If I remember clearly, I could be wrong because I'm not necessarily, this was just something that popped in my mind. So, but anyhow, moving right along. So Noah had Shem, and Shem had Abraham, and later down, Abraham had a wife called Sarah. And again, the names were changed from Abraham to Sarai to Abraham and Sarah. But anyhow, moving right along,
And so this is why they call me pimp, prophet, and priest, because I do, like I said, I do uh, talk a lot about different spiritual belief systems, Buddhism, Hinduism, Sikhism, Christianity, Rastafarianism, all type of different religious beliefs. So you might hear me, like I said earlier, 1 minute I'm talking about the Bible, and 1 minute I'm talking about some religious spiritual belief, and the next minute I'm talking about astrology, and then the next minute I'm talking about some bitches and some hoes. So that is why, again, what you could expect, I don't want you guys to get shocked when you hear me talk about one thing, subject matter, and then I totally go from spirituality that I'm talking about sex or something of the sort, because that is what I do. That's what I talk about, holistic subject matters. That is why I said you could expect me to pretty much talk about anything. That is why I'm using these videos to be subject matters that when people call, we could talk about the video, we could talk about questions based on the subjects that the video was based on. If you're wanting to go practice celibacy or something of the sort, you may be struggling in that area, you might want to know how did I do it, this would be a good opportunity to call in when the top, whatever subject matter the video is about, that will be the subject matter. So if you're struggling with sexual discipline, things of that sort, this is what I would be, this video would be that subject matter. So the next video might be something, I might be talking about spirituality or God or something of that sort. So whatever the video is about, that will be the subject matter. So again, we're talking about this biblical story about Abraham and Sarah, and how, because the story, again, many individuals have asked me in the past where the origination of the pimp concept came from, who were the first pimps and so forth and so forth. And these are real facts that I came up with, or I studied, and I found out going back. If you talk to a real pimp, they will tell you either one of these stories where the pimp game originally came from. And some pimps literally would use the Bible, this particular story that I'm talking about, they would use this story to say this is one of the first references that we have of the game pimping going back to a few thousand years. And again, I'm not here to disrespect anybody's religion. I'm not here to be making fun of anybody's religion. I literally was asked this question, and so I just decided to give this answer up in this video because, like I said again, they do not call me pastor, prophet, and priest. They do not call me pope, prophet, and priest. They do not call me piety or pious prophet and priest. They call me pimp, prophet, and priest for a reason.
They went to Egypt at some point. It was Abraham, Sarah, and Lot. They went to Egypt, and and Sarah was extremely beautiful. Sarah, what today what we would consider a dime piece, or what I'm saying, that's what we would say, or something of that sort. But she was extremely attractive. The Bible said that she was fair, and so with that being said, Abraham knew that most men would want to sleep with her, or they would want to be with her, and so he told her that, hey, what we gonna do before we enter this town?
Just before we go on, that is my point again. So the Bible said that Sarah was fair, Sarah was very attractive, and even Abraham knew that most men would be simping over his wife. Abraham knew that most men do not have any sexual control or discipline, that they would go to the length that of even actually harming him or even taking his life in order to get his beautiful wife Sarah. That is what I'm saying to you. Beautiful women have a different burden. Men also that have beautiful women have a different burden that men that have women that may be five average at best.
They're going to say that you are a family member, or actually you are my sister, and that way my life would be spared, and you would know no harm would come upon me. So they both agreed upon this decision to say that Sarah was Abraham's uh, sister, and they went to Egypt. And lo and behold, the people, the Egyptians there, they felt like Sarah and Abraham. Sarah was extremely beautiful, and they wanted to take Sarah for themselves, just like Abraham had predicted. So Abraham told Sarah to stick to the script, and the Pharaoh decided to take Sarah for himself. And then Abraham told Sarah again, "You tell him you are my brother." And this is an allegorical example of pimping, because what Abraham did was he basically pimped Sarah out to, again, some pimps would say this is an example of a biblical example of pimping, but I'm just giving you guys some historical example where the idea of pimping first originated. And many pimps would say that it was a biblical concept as well, because the Bible does say there's nothing new under the sun, absolutely nothing. It just kind of goes around and comes around in some different form, shape, or fashion. So, anyhow, with that being said, so the Pharaoh took Abraham's wife, but he did not know Sarah was his wife. And then, after a period of time, because he favored Sarah so much, he bestowed plenty of blessings upon Abraham. Also, he gave Abraham.
Let me stop and just kind of reiterate what just happened, because there's a lot of wind going on. Just so we know, for those who might not be familiar with the biblical story of Abraham and Sarah, Abraham and Sarah, I think they went into Egypt. I'm going off memory now based on what I just said. They went into Egypt, and Abraham was afraid that the man would take his life or harm him in order to, get his wife Sarah, his beautiful wife Sarah, not his 4, 5, 6, sorry, not his 5 as at best average looking wife, his dime piece Sarah. Abraham was afraid that man would be willing to do anything to get his wife. So, however, the Pharaoh of Egypt saw Sarah, and he was enamored with Sarah, and he wanted to make Sarah one of his his concubines, or whatever he wanted Sarah for. And so Abraham, being frightened, he told Sarah to let the Pharaoh know that he was his sister. He was her brother, and that is what he told Sarah to do, to let the Pharaoh know that Sarah was his sister, so that the Pharaoh would not take his life. Because if the Pharaoh knew that Abraham was his wife, sorry, her husband, he could have maybe lost his life. So Abraham was the one who actually literally gave Sarah the instructions, just like how a pimp would give his whole instructions. Again, no offense to be taken here. I'm just giving you guys an illustration of where the concept came from, because this is what pimping is. This is how pimps operate. They give hoes instructions, and hoes find a trick or a mark, and they get paid. And that is exactly what happened in this particular situation. Sarah was given instructions. Pharaoh took Sarah in, blessed Sarah with the jewels, and rewarded her with the things and so forth. But let the story go on. I'll let the story go on, because we're talking about Abraham being blessed with oxen and different things of that sort by the Pharaoh, just like a pimp. That is why I said I'm not here to offend anybody. We're just talking about a story that is similar to what a pimp and a hoe transaction is like, dealing with tricks and simps and squares like the Pharaoh.
Oxen, asses, goats, uh, camels, and the list goes on and on. Gold and silver. So Abraham profited from this transaction, just like a pimp would. When a pimp exchanges a hoe, there's usually some type of monetary gain, and that is exactly what happened in the story of Abraham and Isaac. Sorry, Abraham and Sarah. Sarah was exchanged, and in return, Abraham came up, if I may say. Abraham was financially rewarded. So that was one example of, from a biblical perspective, of the pimp game. And again, by no means am I trying to disrespect anybody's religion. I'm just giving you guys a history, because some individuals have asked me in the past, where did this pimp thing come from? And that is one example where it came from. So also, I would like to say, uh, from a historical, now this is a real more factual example of where the pimp game originated. Now, from a pimp perspective, way back in the day, now this is a more realistic, now I say realistic because a more real life example. Way back in the day, the slave masters, and as I said, the story, it would make sense to you too. The slave masters, obviously, they were the slave masters, and they pretty much had the power to pick and choose and refuse which wife or whoever wife or whichever women that they wanted to 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 have sex with. So that is exactly what the slave master did. The slave master, over time, he would just go around and take the slaves, their wives, their daughters, and he would pick the ones that he was most attracted to, the ones that he felt that was most appealing, sexually appealing, and he would have sex with them. And today that is where we have most of our light skinned brothers and sisters originated from, because of procreation with the slave masters. And again, nothing is wrong with this. I'm just saying that this is one reason we have a mixture of colors in the biological black, the black human race, because there was a mixture of many slave masters basically taking women for to have sexual pleasures and desires, have their desires met without any questions asked. So
And I just want to add something here. This is something that's not a part of the video, but this is something that I learned as well along the way. And I actually learned this from another pimp as well, another PI, another P. And the history why some, and by no means I don't want anyone to think that I'm specifically talking about a particular race here, but specifically we're talking about blacks. We're talking about black women and black men. So they have something that transpired between the slave masters and the slave women, the black women. The slave masters used the black women for sexual gratification. did sexual acts with the women without consent, and they just pretty much used and abused the women. And again, I'm not here to talk about any slave type shit. This is not what I'm here for. It's just something that came to my mind. Why men, the black race per se, have the attitude toward that they do have about black women, because the black woman was body was used in such a way that they was degraded and so forth, and so the women, the slave women that were more physically, endowed, if I may say, the masters found them to be more sexually appealing, and they bred those women, and those women they had sexual activities with those women without the women consent, and they call those women, if I remember, bad wenches. So those women that the slave masters slept with without their will, they were called bad wenches, and they pretty much programmed these women to to view their body as an asset. And that is why we see a lot of women, especially black women, have the same mentality as well, that their body is what they utilize the most, because this was something also ingrained in them from slavery. This is something that was put in them subconsciously to use their body to get what they want. That is why we see women may be so, provocative in a certain dress way and so forth. So their body is something that they utilize to get what they want, because this was something, again, that the slave masters did. They labeled these women bad wenches, and what they also did was they took these women and they bred these women with the certain breed of slave males, and the slave males, if I remember clearly, were called bucks. So these slave men were also, because of their physical endowment, they were used to breed with these other women that were also physically endowed. So the slave master took the women that were endowed with asses and breasts and just thick bodies, and then they bred these women with men who, again, may have been blessed physically, muscles, wood, and things of that sort. And so therefore these men were bred to just procreate and bring more slaves into the world, which also was another reason why a lot of men think with their wood only, especially black men, because the black men were programmed to think with their wood because of the slave masters saying that the man with the bigger wood would be the man that would breed with the bigger bitch. So again, what would happen was, now, because of these men being programmed to think with their wood only, they have been programmed to have kids like a cattle, like cows and dogs, the same way cows and sheep are bred. The slave masters literally paired up certain breed of men and women to produce the most thoroughbred slave children. And there's a joke going around, actually there's a joke saying that this is where football players and NBA players and other very big, strong looking athletes, abnormal men with abnormal sizes, they were literally, if you break down their genetics, they came from this breeding of the bad wench and the buck. So therefore now we have black men also as well, are capable of having multiple children all over the place and not taking any responsibility for those kids and not being in the kids' lives as well, because this is also something that was subconsciously bred into the black man's mind, to basically have sex with the women and want to just sleep with them, procreate, to have kids with them, and have no association with the kids, because they were trained to have sex with the women and treat the children as like cattle. So that is also another historical fact that I learned in the game from another P as well. So that is something that we could take into consideration, why black women tend to put their bodies as their priority, and why black men tend to put their their cock, their dick, their penis as their priority as well because of breeding, cattle breeding, slave breeding, the women being bed wenches and the men being called buck. So that is just a little history that I thought that I should share with you guys as well.
Anyhow, back to the story how the pimping came along. So after the slave master did this for some time. And again, for those of you guys who may wonder why I'm not looking in the camera once again, it's because the sun is actually in my face and I'm pointing in a direction to where as I want to see the view behind me. But it's very difficult for me to look straight ahead in the camera because this camera is actually facing the sun is actually directly in my face. And I'm going to get back to the story about the slave masters, but as you can see, the sun is that way directly and pointing that way. That is west. And for those of you guys who may not be able to see, again, that is the Atlantis Hotel right across the street. And that is what the famous Atlantis Hotel, and that is Paradise Island right on the Mississippi. But again, back to the story. So the slave masters, they would take the slaves and they would have sex with the slaves, and they would do this at their own free will. They would not necessarily have to ask for permission, and they would just do this whenever they feel like. So one day, uh, a certain slave, I don't know whose slave it was, I don't know what slave, but somehow a slave had the bright idea. He said, you know what, since the master is going to take you away from me and do what he wants to do with you anyhow, just like the story of Abraham and Sarah, this is a real life example of that. He said that what you could do is you should now, you know, kiss up to the slave master, treat him nice, don't rebel. If he's gonna take you anyhow, and we can't stop him, we can't do anything. So it's best you just, suck it up, bite the bullet, and just go along with it. In fact, try to make it feel enjoyable and try to, boost his confidence and tell him what a good. That's where the whole daddy came from, Big Daddy and all of that. That is actually a slave term. But anyhow, so we, so he told the slave told his wife or his mistress or whatever his wife, to just basically go along with it and give the slave master whatever he needs and try to be as cordial and do not be so rebellious against the slave master. And so the slave master would feel compelled to treat you a lot better, and the slave master would eventually give those perks. Some of those perks would come down to the family because again, and it was true because after the slave master started to feel a certain way about the slave girl, he would send her back home with food and extra excess of supplies, extra grits, extra whatever, extra pork, extra vegetables, whatever they gave the slaves at the time. And even sometimes, because this slave girl was favored, she would even get more better stuff than the average slave girl. She would get more house food, if I may say, and she would take that food back and she would give that to her husband, her slave husband, her real husband, and her kids in the family. They would have more perks than usual.
So let me just go back over that very briefly because of the sound quality was very poor. Again, at the time recording this video, I didn't know anything about having a wind guard on my mic. I was in the heart of the ocean, if you could see, surrounded by sea, surrounded by water, so a lot of wind going on. As you can see, the sailboats in the back and all that stuff. So very windy day. However, again, I didn't know any better at the time, so my apologies. That problem has been resolved because I do have the proper equipment to solve that problem. But anyhow, back to what I was saying. So what I said was that the slave masters pretty much took the slaves' wives and they pretty much had their way with them. The slave masters had sex with the slaves at will, and the slave women could not do anything about it. And again, I'm not here to talk about slavery. I'm not talking about, I'm just doing a recap. I'm doing a reaction video I'm not being. This is not a politics or anything of that sort. So I don't want anybody to think I'm here talking any, you know what I'm saying, any type of black power type shit. No, this is not. I'm just going reviewing what the video was all about. So again, so the slave masters was having sex with the women, and at the women, and the women didn't have any say. So the husbands of the slave masters, sorry, of those slave wives, they said, the husband said, hey, you know what? Basically, if you can't beat them, you might as well join them. So if you can't, we can't do anything about it. We can't stop the slave master. We can't do anything. So maybe what you could do is maybe you could maybe try to find a way to maybe enjoy it, maybe, or try to boost the slave master ego and try to tell him some good stuff and maybe even make him feel good. And so this is the same thing actually is all about pimping. Really, technically, when a p, when someone, a square or a trick or a mark, gets involved with a street walker, that is exactly what happens. Is the whole pretty much boosts, gives the trick or the square some confidence, even false confidence, if I may say. There are some guys that actually fall in love with hoes because of the way hoes treat them differently from, they would not even get the same type of treatment from their wives. That is why hoes still exist. Some men go and sleep with a hoe one time and they just fall in love because the women treat them a certain way. But what most men fail to realize is that is the job of a hoe, to make you want to come back and make you feel as much pleasure as possible. So the job of a hoe is to literally boost your self-esteem, boost your ego, and tell you what a good sexual partner you are, big daddy, and this and that, and just boost your self-esteem. So that is what the slaves decided to do. They said, hey, we can't do anything about it. So they told the wives to just pretty much bite the bullet, suck it up, and try to, give the slave master, compliments and make him feel good about himself and other things that are to stroke his ego, and that way. And so after a period of time, the slave masters would have more compassion on those women, and they would give those women more food and more better quality clothes and all type of different things, because the slave master would even be somewhat fond of the slave girl, and they would give the slave girl more perks, if I may say, more opportunities to work in the house and get more home cooked food. Some of the food the slave master would eat, the slaves would get that as well, because the wife would take that home to the kids. And there was advantages of actually being one of the slave master's concubine, if I may say. So it was the slave, the wife husband was the one who came up with the idea to say, hey, you know what, we can't beat him, we might as well join him, try your best to just suck it up, and let's get something out the deal, rather than just, he's gonna do it anyhow, so hey, we might as well just get something out the deal, and we all could benefit from it. So that was also, if that's a form of pimping, because that's what pimps do. Hoes go out, find tricks, find squares, find simps, and they, have sexual acts for financial gain, and financial transaction takes place, and there's a pimp behind the scene just giving some instructions on how the transaction should go. And so that is what the slave actually did in this particular situation as well.
So that is the slave master story about the first original pimps and how they really came about. And so the black man really was originally the first pimps, if I may say, because it was the slave masters that forced the black man to submit and allow his women to just pretty much go ahead and do whatever she had to do. But instead of just getting nothing out of the deal, it's best that you would get something else out of the deal also as well. The day is kind of windy, and I pray also that this wind is not affecting my video as much as it sounds on here. But I do have sound voice cancellation on. Hopefully that is doing its job, and I'm not sure how much it's doing its job, but hopefully it's doing a good job. So again, with that being said, hopefully that history answers some of you guys' questions, because a lot of people have been asking me that before. Where did this pimping come from? Who was the original pimps? And so forth, and so forth, and so on. So we have one biblical example of Abraham and Sarah, and we have one real historical example of the slave master and the slaves pimping out their slave wives to the slave master to get benefits as well. So on a long, long video, I finally have come to the end. And again, thank you guys for watching this far. This is our part 3 series introduction video and the very last introduction video. Hopefully it sounds okay and the wind does not take away too much of the information and it's bearable enough for you guys to hear. So with that being said, thank you very much. Go ahead, watch part 1, like, share, subscribe, and please comment, and let me know what you guys think about anything that I've said that you may want me to elaborate on in my next video or something that you may want me to answer. Please go ahead and leave a comment, and again, like, share, subscribe, and do all of that so when new videos come out, you guys will be notified when they do come out so you could be abreast on that matter. So I would like to end this video on a more positive, actually the whole video was positive, but on a more positive note. Again, that is how I was able to go 6 years because my sexual history was extremely unhuman. So on that
I thought all the shit talking was ended. I thought that was the end of it. That's funny. I said my sexual history has been extremely unhuman. And for those of you guys know, that's why I said you guys go and watch the video. Go back and watch the whole video. It's titled "How Did I Go 6 Years No Sex and Was Happy?" And that's where you guys could see all the captions. Because I'm standing in the front of the video. You guys gonna be able to watch the video without me interrupting the video, commenting and so forth and so on as well. But that was funny that my body count was extremely unhuman.
note, I will end. May the stars shine brightly on you always. And may the planets work in your favor always as well. Triple P, and I'm out.
Oh. Oh.
So another great review. Like I said, I cannot express this enough that I have never done any content creation. I never had any channels. I don't use any scripts. So all of that talking was just pretty much me talking on the top of the doom. And so I think again, I was gifted as usual, like I said, with the gift of gab. And if you guys look right here, this was the video that I did. The very last video that I did was part 2. This is part 3. That video was talking about me going 2,190 days, no FAP, no pornography, no masturbation, things of that sort as well. So I highly suggest that you guys go back and watch that video also. And so this particular video, like I said, ending this video is this title right here. And let's see, I'm actually happy, going 6 years. This is the video review of going 6 years without sex and being happy. So like I said, if you look clearly, I look extremely happy. I don't look like I'm sad. I don't look like I'm crying or anything of that sort. So if I could do it, I'm sure some of you guys could go at least 6 hours, 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months. You don't have to go 6 years or anything of the sort, but I highly recommend that you start somewhere, take some type of break, be able to practice some type of sexual discipline, try to find some type of way to get that sexual discipline under control, because it will take you a very, very far away. Because like I said in the previous videos, when you do practice sexual discipline over a period of time, what is going to happen is that confidence, that self-confidence is going to build. You're going to be more confident in other areas, and that's going to trickle down in other bad areas. You're going to be able to actually get a grasp on and maybe do much better in life as well. So with that being said, I thank you guys so much for watching this long. I know this has been a very long review because that is the purpose of these videos, for me to go back and react. So I thank you guys so much for sticking around this long. And as usual, please continue to like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff, because we are a new channel. I am new to this live streaming. All of this is new. So again, I cannot stress my appreciation enough. And I thank you guys so much to continue for the support that you guys have shown me in the very short period of time that you guys have done. And as usual, If you are, please, please, please stop, discontinue believing in illusions, delusions, and hallucinations. Triple P, and I'm out.